I was just getting into summer. It was a really slow start to summer because it was so cold. It's really affected our fruit in the area. Do you know that? Something like 50% of the expected harvest for peaches came in this year because of the cold winter and rubbish spring we had. But there's been less fire and less smoke. So we kind of need this divine balance somehow each year. And I encourage people to pray for our region, for the weather, because we get to steward our world as part of our expression in the kingdom. So be praying for that. Lord, bring in, take out the chaos in our environment. Lord, bring in blessing. One of the consequences, first named consequence of the fall and the effect and the impact of Adam and Eve's sin was it caused chaos in nature. And you remember when God listed the curses, it actually had a direct, not an indirect, but a direct correspondence between Adam's sin and nature. And I think some of the chaos that we see around us is still to some degree fueled by that. As intercessors, people that stand in the gap between humanity and the consequences of sin, which is the ministry of Christ and the ministry of reconciliation, we can pray for mercy for our world and that God would actually forgive the sin of our world. And I really believe it can have an impact on weather systems and all sorts like that. It's a whole interesting area to explore. But that's not actually what I want to share with you now. Try and do this quickly. So we're going into fall, and I'm excited about it. Fall is the church proper start for the year. And we've got a number of things that are lined up that are significantly different to anything that we've tried in the last 6 years. So when Jody and I arrived in 2016. Was it 2016 or 2018? We've been here 6 years. What's that? Yeah, 16. August the 11th was my first Sunday. We shared a few months after being here that God had brought us in here to partner with the call on this house as an apostolic prophetic house, and that there was a call on this house to impact our city. I've been talking that theology for the last 6 years, and finally on our horizon is something, if we choose to move forward with that and it checks out all okay, that we'll do that for the city. So we now have an opportunity to potentially partner with an initiative that will move the needle of health in a positive direction. I said God was going to do that through this house. In 2016 when I was here. But I said that actually critical to seeing that happen was the culture of the church, the most fundamentally important piece of thing that God had called me to bring wasn't a new vision per se, but the culture that would carry the vision. And what I meant by that was that the spearhead of the leaders that Jesus had appointed for the movement that he handed over just prior to ascending into heaven, he named as apostles. Yeah, you've heard of apostles from the Bible. And apostles weren't Pope-type figures. They weren't religious leaders like rabbis. They were borrowed from the Roman world that Jesus was living in. And the apostles were essentially culture builders. And their job was that after the emperor had conquered a nation or a place, that they would go in to the conquered nation and they would establish the culture of their sending empire, Rome. And the idea was that they would Romanize the actual conquered nation so that should the emperor ever come visiting, it would feel a lot like home to him, even though it was a foreign nation. And the apostles that Jesus appointed at the spearhead of his ministry had the mission of on earth as it is in heaven. Their job was to establish the culture of heaven on earth. And back in 2016 and over the kind of the subsequent years, I've talked about culture being the most powerful, invisible force in the world. And I still believe that culture is the most powerful, invisible force that influences all of us. And it's all around in different kinds of spheres and different kinds of areas. And actually, culture impacts us unconsciously. And what's amazing about it is it's passed from person to person to person. And the longer that you are in a culture, the more enculturated you become. And you move towards this gravitational norm within the particular culture that you're actually in. And so there's different kinds of cultures out there. There are cultures within families, there's cultures within churches, although church cultures tend to be very diluted because there's often competing cultures at force. So it's one of the reasons we don't see great change within churches. There's cultures within nations, such as Canada. And things, no, it's true. The Pervase family, although they're from another country, will become enculturated as time goes on without them having to go to any lessons. Just being in the environment, they're going to catch, like I've been, what it is to be Canadian, and we become more hostile in our driving on the roads. Yeah. Seriously. I was like, wow, who taught you guys to drive? Culture. Yeah? Joking aside, I said in 2016 when I came here, I came to establish a culture. And I used an analogy back then, which I'll remind you of, that culture is like playing the circular hot tub game. So how many of you have got a circular hot tub? Anyone? Oh, Sandra. So if you've got a circular hot tub, and like you can play this game with people. Imagine this is the hot tub here. You get a few people in the pool. The circular hot tub game is where you all begin to walk around the outside of the hot tub in the same direction. And when you first get going, it's hard to push against the water. But as you keep going in the same direction, it gets easier and easier and easier until you're like flying around. Woo! And anyone jumping into the pool from the outside gets caught up in the flow of what's happening. And it's hard to actually go in an opposite direction. That's what culture does in an environment. It's a good analogy. And I said in 2016, we were gonna build you a culture. And in order to do that, we had to engineer the culture. And apostles were great culture builders because they knew how cultures were constructed. They knew how to do that with the systems that they put in place, the things that they would actually establish in different midst. But essentially, culture is the byproduct of unconsciously common held beliefs, because our beliefs actually result in behaviors. Our beliefs engender values, and those values are lived out in behaviors, all right? And so when I came here in 2016, I said, I was bringing with me 5 core beliefs that were designed to actually engender this culture that was going to carry this kingdom-bringing force that New Life was called to carry, which is essentially the presence of God on us, okay? So in some ways, over the last 6 years, we've been doing that, but I wouldn't say that we have this flow going yet. We have to get this flow going for the sake of this church, and I believe for the sake of our city. If we choose to go ahead with this initiative, and I'm not saying that we are, there's a process we're working through, but regardless of this or something else, if what we are carrying is not contagious and impacting enough, we're not going to affect anyone around us. And so, in view of that, we are introducing something that is going to bring a church-wide alignment that will get us running in the same direction. We've not done this in 6 years, but we're making some radical decisions for the fall that is something that I know is causing turbulence in our midst already. But I want to explain what the spirit behind this is, because there's certain people that have heard that we're pausing our groups for 8 weeks. And the truth is, we're pausing all groups for 8 weeks because we're having a intentional, focused learning at a couple of levels across the church. One of those is we're asking you to lend us your leaders for 8 weeks, because they are the ones that will be working with you guys to replicate the culture that we're looking to build. And we need them to take them through this Destiny Finder program, which is really, it's not a program, it's a culture builder. And we're asking you, would you be gracious enough to lend us your leaders for 8 weeks while we train them up in this? My favorite soccer team, which I'm unashamed of actually sharing. I was sharing this morning, although I don't know what the score is, that they were playing this morning, and I asked everyone to join hands and intercede for my team, Man United, who are playing this morning. Don't tell me the result. They're playing the league leaders. They've had a terrible 10 years. When I was growing up, they were the top team of the world for 2 decades, or a decade and a half under Alex Ferguson. And when he left, they couldn't win anything for the last 10 years. Recently, they brought in a new manager, Erik ten Hag from the Netherlands. And his goal is to actually cause the team to win. And in order to get the team to win, he has said to the team, I need to teach you a new system of playing. And the system of playing that he's teaching them is something that he has told the team, look, this is why I've come here. I'm going to teach you all this system of playing, and this will result in us winning and becoming champions. But it requires everyone is on the same page and playing this system together. Now, within Man United, they've got one of the world's greatest ever players, a guy called Ronaldo. Have you heard of him? Ronaldo! Yeah, he's the greatest striker of our generation. And Ronaldo missed, for some reason, the pre-season playing. And there's some talk behind the scenes of, was he unhappy with the system, or all sorts. But Ronaldo didn't know how to play this system. He's perhaps the greatest person on this team. But playing the game as the team is more than just one person, yeah? In order to win with this new system, all of the team need to be on the same page together and have got it, including Ronaldo. And until Ronaldo is familiar with this system, he's been benched, of all things. And it's not that Erik ten Hag is being mean or cruel. He just recognizes that in order to win the game, see the kingdom come, that this is a team game. And so right now we are training up a team of people to play the team game together. And we're asking that, would you be gracious enough to actually allow your leaders to have this focused training, and they're going to learn a system. And yes, it's going to have kind of impact because it's going to change the way we play and our church, but many of you won't even notice day to day, week to week, the differences, but it's going to, at a fundamental level, it's going to make a change, all right? And then, what else was going to add? Oh, and then whilst this is happening, we are simultaneously, we pivoted slightly because we want to take you all through this together, but we realized actually, no, this isn't going to work until our leaders have got it. So we want to train them to train and get it, and then they will train you guys to get it. And so during this program, Destiny Finder, that they're doing, we're inviting you guys to actually learn something of this culture at a deeper level that we've been talking about over the last 6 years. And I have access through a back door to some great teaching material where you've got the likes of Bill Johnson, Chris Valentin, who are actually teaching at a really concentrated way this culture that we're talking about. And so it's not that you're not going to be learning about this, you'll be learning about it in a different way. But we've got that running simultaneously with you. And we're inviting you to try something different in this season, to actually join with us, to be a part of this new thing that God's gonna do through us. And the challenge, and I guess I'm like, there's a couple of challenges here. Eric Ten Hag, who's Man United's manager and coach, he's doing his job by introducing the system. He's not trying to control people. He's just bringing and inviting the team into a system of playing, and he wants everyone on board. I'm not trying to control or dictate to people by saying, you must do this. No, it's an invitation for you. And the question I really want to extend to you is, will you allow myself and my wife to be your coach in this? Because I believe that is why we've come. I honestly believe this is why we've come. We're at the precipice of something incredible in the legacy of not just New Life, I believe, but the church. The destination where God is leading the church in this season. No other generation has been. This is a new day. The cloud has moved. Has anyone noticed that? The cloud has moved. And it's not that God is upset with the church, but he goes to where the broken and the lost are. And let me tell you this, the lost and the broken don't come here on a Sunday morning. We do, the people of God do. In a time gone by in Christendom, which was 50 years ago, we were seeing the kind of the final setting of Christendom in our world. People were more regularly attending church on a Sunday morning because it was part of the culture that we're in. Culture has moved, and the cloud will move to where the lost and the broken are, because that is who Jesus came for. And part of what we're teaching in this season is how to be not just a follower of Jesus ourselves, but a follower of Jesus for where the cloud has moved to and where the world is now. And it's new and it's scary and it feels like a destination we've never been to. You're right, nor have I. But I know how to follow the cloud. And my question again to you is, will you trust us? Will you give us that grace? Will you be patient with us as we try and lead you into this destination? Yeah? There we go. Oh man, that's a preach. That was meant to be an explanation. It's honestly, I'm so excited about what we're stepping into. Prior to COVID coming and happening, there were so many prophecies about the billion soul harvest was just about to happen. You remember that? And with the Chiefs winning the American Football League that season, and there was a Bob Jones world that when the Chiefs win the World Series, the billion soul harvest had started. And then freaking COVID showed up. And I was like, what? Crazy, what's going on here? That was part of what God allowed to happen, because the system of being and doing church that we are so stuck in won't actually reach the billion soul harvest. It won't. And so he put the handbrake on and the brake on and allowed that to happen and shut things down. And the tendency of moves of the past is that we create monuments out of them. And the invitation in this season is, as we move to where the cloud is, that do we trust him even though we're in unfamiliar land? That's preach number 2. All right, I'm not going to get my message out today. Unless you want to stay for another hour? Any volunteers? We'll do that next week. All right. Anything else? Yeah, good. We honestly love you. And we've come, like Jody and I, have been through the hardest 6 years of our lives. We prayed for the rapture that we don't even believe in many times during the last 6 years. Beam me up, Scotty. But we're here because God has called us to be here. And in his wisdom, he knows that somehow we have something that this church and the church needs in this day. And we get to figure this out together. Get to be church together. Get to do things differently. Yeah? All right. Good. That's it. I'm not going to say any more. And go home for your long weekends.